Hello everybody, I'm Linguaphiliax, and in order to understand the sentence, "the dog chased the cat," you need to know two things. One, who or what is doing the chasing, and two, who or what is being chased. I mean, obviously you also need to know what a dog is and what a cat is and what chasing looks like, but the point is you need to be able to identify which noun phrase is the subject, the one performing the action, or the object, the one affected by the action. And while this is hopefully a pretty simple concept to understand, different languages have different ways of explaining which one is which, and that's why I'll be going over the many common ways they do so in order to help all of you in your language learning journeys. And of course, if you want more videos like this one that dive into the fundamental interconnectedness of all human languages and how they function, don't forget to give this video a like and leave nice comments down below to show your appreciation. Maybe even share it online to anyone else you think would enjoy this stuff, and of course, the only way you'll be able to see videos as soon as they're uploaded is by subscribing and ringing that notification bell. Specifically in that order. You can't get notifications if you aren't subscribed to the channel. Sorry about that. I didn't program YouTube that way, but my channel's survival just depends upon you knowing this. But anyway, speaking of doing things in the correct order, for a lot of languages, the distinction between the subject and the object is typically conveyed through the order in which words are placed in the sentence. In the case of English, the subject is always at the start of the sentence, the verb is put directly after the subject, and the object, if there is one, is placed directly after the verb. This is known as the subject-verb-object construction, or SVO. Other languages that follow this construction include, but are not limited to, Indonesian, Mandarin, Wolof, Mapuche, Northern Sami, and literally too many to mention in one video. In fact, the World Atlas of Language Structures identifies 488 different languages that follow this word order, making up just over 35% of all the 1,376 languages listed. In other words, pretty much every red dot you see on this map is an SVO language. But while the SVO construction is a very common word order, it is actually only the second most commonly used word order in the world. The prize for the most commonly used word order would have to go to languages that list off the subject and the object together and then place the verb at the end of the sentence, the subject-object-verb construction, SOV. The World Atlas of Language Structures identifies 564 different languages that follow this word order, making up almost 41% of all the languages surveyed. Basically all of the blue dots you see on this map are an SOV language. These languages include, but are not limited to, Japanese, Hindi, Lakota, Gamalerai, Quechua, Greenlandic, and once again literally too many languages to list here. I feel I should also mention that the third most common word order for languages has the verb placed at the beginning of the sentence, verb, subject, object, VSO. It is only used by just under 7% of all the languages, but considering those languages include Irish, Arabic, Maori, and Tagalog, as well as a few others like Quileot and Zapotec, I feel like it is also an important sentence structure that you should be aware of. But anyway, you get the idea. The order of the words in the sentence is a very common way in which languages distinguish between the subject and the object. But those of you looking at this graph might have noticed that there is an extra 14% of languages that do not possess a dominant word order. So then you might be asking, how do all of these languages distinguish between the subject and the object if they don't do it with syntax? Well, the answer is actually very simple. They literally tell you which one is which. In Hungarian, for example, one translation of the sentence "the dog chased the cat" is "a kutya üldözte a macskát," subject, verb, object, but it could also be translated as "a macskát üldözte a kutya," object, verb, subject. This is because all Hungarian nouns have this thing called grammatical case, which is where the ending of the noun changes depending on its role in the sentence, including the subject with the nominative case and the object with the accusative case. For both these sentences, the word for dog is put in the nominative and the word for cat is in the accusative, so no matter what order you put the noun phrases in, the meaning of the sentence, semantically speaking, wouldn't change at all. In order to turn the sentence into "the cat chased the dog," cat would have to be in the nominative and dog the accusative, turning the sentence into into a mochka ildezde ogutyat, or some variant of that. For Hungarian and many other languages, case marking is something that is latched onto the individual nouns, but for other languages like Japanese, grammatical cases are expressed through tiny particles or clitics that modify the noun phrase. Just to illustrate the slight difference between the two, in the sentence "the dog chased the woman and the cat," the words woman and cat are both the object of the sentence. In Hungarian, this sentence would be "Agutya ildezde a nőt és a macskát," where nő and machka would both decline for the accusative case and each have their own ending. Comparing this with the Japanese translation of the sentence "Inu wa onna to neko o oikakemashita," onna and neko are both still the object, but they are instead put together into the same noun phrase, which is then modified by wo to convey the same information. But anyway, there are hundreds of different languages all over the world that make use of grammatical case, and each language has a different number of cases depending on how many they deem necessary to use. Amharic has 2 cases, Icelandic has 4 cases, Nyamba has 5 cases, Latin had 6 cases, and Hungarian has a whopping 18 different cases, which each have their own distinct functions. Regardless as to how many a language has, there will most often be at least 2 different cases that convey the subject or the object or both. Exactly what those cases are called, however, depends on what morphosyntactic alignment the language adheres to. Hey linguophiliacs, what does morphosyntactic alignment mean? Wow, you got that on the first try, good on you. And I am so glad you asked that question, but first you have to know the difference between transitive and intransitive sentences. I already know that. Okay, but they mightn't. Right, sorry. Anyway, a transitive sentence is a sentence where the verb takes an object, and an intransitive sentence is one where it doesn't. For example, "the dog chased the cat" is a transitive sentence with a subject and an object, and "the dog sits" is an intransitive sentence with only a subject and nothing else. And now is the moment where I have to confess something slightly. I've been lying to you. This isn't actually the subject, this is the agent. Well, okay, it's not really a lie per se, it's just that in order to keep track of which subject we're talking about, linguists label the subject of transitive sentences as the agent while keeping the subject label the same for intransitive sentences. And using the initials S, A, and O for each of the various roles, we can now finally talk about what morphosyntactic alignment actually is. So, morphosyntactic alignment is the type of case marking systems that a language uses in order to differentiate between the subject, agent, and object. I already explained how the cases in Hungarian are called the nominative and the accusative. This is because Hungarian uses the nominative-accusative alignment, where the subject and the agent use one case, the nominative, while the object uses another case, the accusative. A lot of nominative-accusative languages treat the nominative case as the base form of the word, with the accusative case being specifically marked, just like we see in Hungarian, but it is also just as likely that a language might mark both the nominative and the accusative individually, in which case it is usually treated as an inherent feature of the noun itself. It is pretty rare that the accusative case would be treated as the bare form of words, though it does pop up occasionally, but typically because the subject is the most commonly used grammatical role, most languages treat the nominative as the default form of nouns. So that's the nominative-accusative alignment sorted out, but obviously if that were the only type of case marking system out there, I wouldn't be bringing it up. There are also many languages that mark the agent with its own case, known as the ergative, and the subject and object with another, known as the absolutive. And this system, surprise surprise, is called the ergative-absolutive alignment. This alignment is not as common as nominative-accusative, but there are still a substantial amount of languages that do this, like imagine a ratio of 3 to 2, and those that do use ergative-absolutive typically have the ergative case as marked and the absolutive case as the bare form. As far as I know, it's pretty rare for the absolutive case to be marked as well, and even more rare for the ergative case to go without marking, but it would not surprise me if there were languages out there that did either of these things. It is also possible for a language to use 3 different cases for each grammatical role, creating what is known as tripartite alignment. Usually for tripartite languages, the agent and the object subject are marked for their own separate cases, typically the ergative and the accusative respectively, and the subject is treated as the bare form with the absolutive case. And it is of course possible for a language to mark all the grammatical roles in exactly the same way. In other words, they don't have any cases for the subject, agent, or object at all, and they probably just use word order instead. Although that being said, I have been talking about case marking and word order for the majority of this video as if they have been mutually exclusive, like if a language has a strict word order then they don't have cases and vice versa. But this is usually far from true. More often than not, the two actually go hand in hand, and a language will rely on both grammatical cases and the order of words to convey the grammatical roles of all the noun phrases in a sentence. In fact, the English language has cases as well, even though the word order is strictly subject, verb, object. It's just that English only uses case marking on its personal pronouns. For example, I chased the cat chased me. I and me both mean the same thing. They are first-person singular pronouns, they refer to the person who is speaking the sentence, and they change forms depending on which grammatical role they fit into. But you can't exactly swap the words of these sentences around and say something like the cat chased I or me chased the cat. That just sounds weird. So word order is still an important rule in English despite pronouns having grammatical case. All of the animate pronouns in English have a subject, object, and possessive form, and this is why a lot of language purists go grammando on you if you say who when you should be saying whom. Who saw the dog? He saw the dog. Whom did the dog see? The dog saw him. By the way, the possessive case is another really commonly used case across languages, but it doesn't really have anything to do with subjects or objects. I just thought it was another interesting thing to mention. There did used to be a time when the nouns in English were also inflected for cases, but nowadays only pronouns retain their different case inflections. This is also another common thing that happens, where languages create a split in the declension between nouns and pronouns, using different case systems to inflect the different word classes. In fact, a lot of Pama-Nyungan languages use a nominative-accusative alignment for pronouns, but the nominals follow an ergative-absolutive alignment, just like I mentioned in my Gamalerai Minority Language report. You know, I wonder if I should go back to doing those reports. They are pretty informative, but I do feel like I end up running out of material to talk about sometimes and end up saying the same things over and over again. You know what, if any of you watching want to see me do more of those videos, don't hesitate in telling me about it in the comments down below. And as always, if you somewhat enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and share it with your friends online, and if you really enjoyed it, the only way you'll be able to see more is if you subscribe and ring that notification bell. Remember to do it in that order. And I would also just like to take this opportunity to remind you that you can also find all sorts of bonus stuff, as well as support me and my channel directly via my Patreon page. Thank you all for listening, and we'll speak again next time.